Chapter 1 The Wooden Horse. Long ago, a Trojan prince stole Helen, a Greek princess. He took her to the city Troy. At once, a Greek king named Ulysses set sail with many other Greek kings and their armies to rescue her. Ulysses and the soldiers came face to face with the Trojans outside the city. The Greek men fought bravely. But the Troy army wasn't their only problem. The city of Troy was protected by huge walls. The Greek armies fought the Trojans for 10 years, but they couldn't get into Troy. After hundreds of battles and thousands of injuries, they still hadn't rescued Helen. But Ulysses was not going to give up. He thought of a turning trick. The next day, the Trojans awoke to a surprise. Outside the city walls, the Greek camp had disappeared. In its palace stood a giant wooden horse. Every single one of the Greek ships had vanished too. "We won!" shouted the people of Troy. They wheeled the wooden horse through the gates into the city and partied till midnight. Unknown to the Trojans, Ulysses and his men were hiding inside the horse. While everyone was sleeping, they climbed down a rope ladder. Then they crept to the city gates and opened them. Outside, the rest of the Greek army was waiting. The soldiers had sailed back to Troy in the dark of night. When morning came, the city of Troy woke up to a nightmare. The Troy men tried to fight, but the Greek soldiers killed them all. Then the Greeks stole all of the treasure, set fire to buildings, and rescued Helen. The war with Troy, the Trojan War, was over. As for Ulysses and his men, the adventures had just begun. Chapter 2 The Syllabus. The Greek kings shared out the treasure between them. Then all the ships set sail for home, but Ulysses and his men got lost. After 2 weeks at sea, they landed on an island to look for more food and water. All they had left to drink was some wine, which they took with them. At the top of the cliff, they found a cave. It was full of huge cheeses and vast buckets of milk. The men called out, but there was no answer. "Let's go in and eat now," suggested Ulysses. "Then we can wait for the owner." As they ate, a shadow fell on the miner. He looked up and saw a one-eyed giant, Usborne. He drove his sheep into the cave and rolled a rock across the entrance, blocking them in. His enormous eyes glared at the Greeks. "Who are you?" he roared. As the Ulysses tried to explain, the slips snatched up 2 men. He crushed them in his fists and ate them both. The slips gave a long group, lay down, and went to sleep. The men begged Ulysses to kill him before he ate them too. "No," said the wise king. "If I kill him, who's going to move that heavy rock and set us free?" The next morning, Phillips went out of the cave. He moved the heavy rock back into place, trapping the man inside. Ulysses and his men had to think fast. When the Phillips returned, Ulysses offered him some wine. "What is your name?" asked the Phillips. "Nobody," replied Ulysses, pouring out more wine. "What a funny name," laughed the Phillips and fell asleep. Ulysses picked up a pole that he had sharpened and hidden. He heated the end in the fire. The man tiptoed toward the giant. They planted the red-hot pole into his eye. The Phillips roared out in pain. Everyone on the island rushed to see what was wrong. "Nobody was hurt me," cried Phillips. "Nobody poked my eye out, and I can't see." "If nobody was hurt you, then stop crying like a baby," said the other giants, walking away. Blind and furious, Phillips rolled away the rock. He waited for the Greeks to come up, but Ulysses had already planned their escape. Each man was tied under the belly of the ship. All the sailors could feel was wool and horns. Too late, the giant realized he's been tricked. Ulysses and his men had already escaped. Chapter 3 Ceres and Her Spells. The Greeks sailed away laughing, but they had made a new enemy, the Cyclops' father, Poseidon. Poseidon was the god of the sea. He hated Ulysses and his crew for hunting one of his sons. They won't be laughing for very long, he sneered. Soon Ulysses' ship had landed on another island. Ulysses divided his men into two groups. One man, Eurylochus, would lead half the crew in search of food and water. Ulysses would stay with the rest of the men to guard his ship. Ulysses and his men worked for hours. They couldn't find anything to drink or eat, and they didn't meet a soul. Finally, one of the men saw a wisp of smoke rising above the trees. The smoke led them to a palace and a beautiful woman. The woman led them into a grand hall. A feast was laid out on a table. "You are my guests," said the woman. "Please eat." Between mouthfuls, Woman asked her name. "I'm Ceres," she said, and filled the men's cups with wine. The Greeks ate, drank, and sang a lot. Didn't notice that Eurylochus wasn't there. He didn't trust Ceres, so he was spying from outside. What happened next made him gasp in horror. One wave of Ceres' magic turned the men into pigs. Eurylochus raced back to the ship. He told the others what he had seen. Without delay, Ulysses set off to rescue his friends. On the way, Hermes, who was a messenger for the gods, flew up to him. "The goddess Athene sent you this magic flower," he told Ulysses. "Eat it, and you will be safe from Ceres' tricks." At the palace, Ceres invited Ulysses inside for some wine. Behind his back, she poured some poison into his cup. Ulysses drank the wine. He wasn't afraid of Ceres' magic. Then she tapped him with her wand. He jumped up. "Your evil magic can't harm me," he cried. "Now take me to my crew." Ceres was scared. She led him to the pigsty right away. Ceres smeared the potion onto the pigs' nuts. Magically, they changed back into men. The men were frightened of Ceres, and she promised not to work any more magic on them. If she did, she knew Ulysses would kill her. She prepared a great feast that lasted a year. The men from the ship came to join in too. When the men decided to go, Ceres was very upset. She had fallen in love with Ulysses, but she gave them food and warned them of dangers that lay ahead. Chapter 4 The Bewitched Sirens. The Greeks' next challenge was to sail past the Sirens' Island. This was treacherous than it sounds. Sirens were sea nymphs who bewitched passing sailors with their beautiful suns. Men would sail closer and closer to the island until they would crack their ships on the rocks and drown. Ceres had warned Ulysses about the sirens. He knew just what to do. Ulysses cut up pieces of beeswax and gave them to his men to use as earplugs. But Ulysses wanted to hear what was so special about the sirens singing. He told his men to tie him tightly to the mast. When the sirens began to sing their delicious songs, only Ulysses was bewitched. "Untie me from the ropes," he pleaded. He crew just rode on. They couldn't hear a thing. The servants were astonished to see the Greek ship sail straight past their eyes. Chapter 5. The Whirlpool Monster. When they thought they were safe, the crew unplugged their airs and untied their leader. Suddenly there was a sound of angry water whooshing around. They were about to be stuck into a whirlpool. Row for your lives! Crew Hunter Man yelled, "Useless, keep near the cliff." The man was so busy avoiding the whirlpool that they didn't notice the six-headed monster reached down from a cave in the cliff. The monster was called Sketta, and she was very hungry. Each of her 6 necks stretched across the sea, and each mouth picked up a man. The man begged for help, but she swallowed them all. Chapter 6. The Sea Got Revenge. The terrified Greeks rowed away from Skella as fast as they could, but a raging storm blew up and snapped the mast in two. Poseidon was getting his revenge. Then a giant wave flooded the ship and all the men joined, except Ulysses. He clung to the broken mast and somehow reached the shore. Next morning, a princess found him caught up on the sand. She took him to see her father, the king. Ulysses told the king about his adventures. "I will help you," promised the king. "One of my ships will take you home this evening." Ulysses fell asleep on the king's ship. When they reached his island, the sailors carried him to the beach. At that moment, Poseidon surfed by his chariot. Ulysses should have died in the storm, he grumbled. "I will punish those who helped him." And he turned the king's ship and the sails into sail. Chapter 7. Home at Last. For the first time in 20 years, Ulysses woke up on his home island. A lady nearby was watching him. "The gun is Athene," whispered Ulysses. "You can't go home yet," she said. "You've been away so long. Everyone thinks you're dead." "Things have changed. Many men are at the palace now. They want to marry your wife, Penelope, and kill your son, Telemachus." Athene hadn't planned. She gave Ulysses a disguise and sent him to the pig keeper's hut. The pig keeper thought Ulysses was a hungry beggar. He invited him in for some food and a chat. Then Athene sent Ulysses' son, Prince Telemachus, to the same hunt. When the pig keeper was out of the room, Athene used her magic to remove Ulysses' disguise. Telemachus was no longer looking at a beggar. He was looking at his father. Quickly, Ulysses and his son talked about how to save Penelope and the kingdom. The next day, Ulysses went to the palace with the pig keeper. Once again, he was in disguise. Ulysses pretended to beg inside the great hall. Dozens of men were feasting and boasting about who would marry Queen Penelope. They only gave Ulysses a few crumbs to eat. "Go away, you smelly beggar," they said. When Queen Penelope heard there was a beggar in the palace, she asked her nurse to fetch him. "Maybe she has news of Ulysses," he said to himself. "Don't be sad," said Ulysses. "Your husband is very close by." He hid his face so that Penelope wouldn't recognize him. Suddenly, the goddess Athene put an idea into Penelope's head. That night, Ulysses slept on the floor of the great hall. In the morning, the men arrived as usual. They were surprised when they saw Queen Penelope carrying Ulysses' bow. "Gentlemen," he announced, "I will marry the man who can use this bow. All he needs to do is shoot an arrow through these 12 axes." She gave the bow to a servant and left the hall. All the men wanted to show their strength and win the queen. They tried and they tried, but none of them could even put a string on the bow. When the man gave up, Ulysses stepped forward. "May I try?" At first the man laughed, but Ulysses didn't listen. He picked up the bow, put on the string, and fired an arrow straight through the axis. The man gasped as Athene changed back Ulysses' rags into his clothes. "I'm King Ulysses, and I have come to reclaim my kingdom." Ulysses and Telemachus fought all the men who wanted to steal the kingdom. The men tried to escape, but the doors were locked. Soon Ulysses and his son had killed all of them all. When Penelope heard what had happened, she rushed into the hall. Could this man really be Ulysses? Maybe the gods were tricking her. Penelope thought of one last test. She asked her nurse to remove the bed out of her room so the stranger could rest on it. "But that's impossible," said Ulysses. "I built the bedroom around a tall autumnal tree. The bed is part of the tree." "Oh, Ulysses, it's really you," said Penelope, smiling. After years of trouble and trouble, the family was together at last.